stop what you are doing, put it down, and pay attention. Because what I am about to walk you through involves criminal fraud, forged signatures, and a prince who may genuinely be standing on the edge of the most complete personal destruction any member of the modern royal family has ever experienced. This is not gossip. This is not speculation dressed up as analysis. This is about a sworn witness statement that appears to have been manufactured from scratch. A lawyer accused of purchasing false testimony and a marriage that multiple sources now describe as having passed the point of no return. As of today, March 19th, 26, Prince Harry is staring into an abyss. And I mean that in every concrete, measurable sense. His money, his children, his freedom, and the mainstream media is practically silent on it because they have spent years learning what happens when you draw the attention of the Sussex legal operation. But we are going through every document, every accusation, every legal trap this man has walked into with his eyes fully open. Because this story stopped being about a failing marriage a long time ago. This is now about whether a man who burned through $50 million on litigation is about to face criminal charges himself. Let me tell you who Prince Harry actually is. Not the version that was packaged and sold to you. Not the courageous truth-teller narrative. Not the wounded veteran seeking justice. Not the principled father standing up against the machinery of institutional power. That is the Netflix version. That is what happens when an excellent PR operation meets a compliant media cycle. The real Prince Harry is a man who has made one catastrophically poor legal and financial decision after another for 6 consecutive years. And now with no safety net left and no allies left to call in, those decisions are arriving all at once. Start with the pattern because there is a pattern unmistakable, consistent, and breathtaking in its self-destructiveness. It begins with the decision he made in 2018. When Harry married Meghan Markle, he refused to sign a prenuptial agreement. A person close to him later explained the reasoning. He believed in the marriage completely. He trusted her without reservation. He did not want paperwork contaminating something he considered sacred. Romantic, yes. Sweet, perhaps. Also, one of the most financially reckless decisions a man in his position could possibly have made. Consider what this man had witnessed. He watched his parents' marriage collapse in the most public, the most ugly, and the most financially devastating fashion imaginable. He watched his mother lose her royal standing, her official protection, and her place in the family structure. He watched the War of the Whales do generational damage to the institution he was born into. He absorbed every bit of it. And he walked into a marriage with a woman he had known for fewer than 2 years. A woman whose previous marriage had ended with her reportedly mailing the ring back and handed her complete financial exposure with zero protection for himself. No prenup, no asset separation, no contingency planning of any kind, just trust. That is pattern number 1. Pattern number 2 arrived in 2020 when the couple relocated to California and restructured their financial arrangements. According to sources with knowledge of their business dealings, a post-nuptial amendment was signed during the construction of the Archwell Enterprise, a document that transferred majority control of their shared brand and intellectual property directly to Meghan. Harry reportedly signed it without subjecting it to the kind of scrutiny you would expect from a man who simultaneously employs legal teams to hunt down newspaper editors over stories published 15 years ago. This is a man who sees conspiracy in unflattering photographs and pursues litigation over perceived slights with the tenacity of someone who has never once considered the cost of being wrong. That same man apparently did not read carefully the document determining ownership of his entire commercial future. Compare that to what happened when Meghan ended her first marriage to Trevor Engelson. Multiple lawyers, exhaustive clause-by-clause review, a clean and precisely negotiated separation executed with clinical efficiency. With Harry, she achieved the same outcome without him even fully understanding what he was agreeing to. That is not coincidence. That is a strategy, and it was executed flawlessly. Pattern number 3 is unfolding right now, and it is the most devastating yet. Harry is currently prosecuting a massive lawsuit against Associated Newspapers, the parent company of the Daily Mail. The total cost of the case is in the region of $50 million in legal fees, with the losing party facing the additional burden of covering the winner's costs. And in the days immediately before the trial was scheduled to open, explosive allegations surfaced against Harry's own solicitor, David Sherborne. allegations of making financial payments in exchange for sworn testimony, allegations of deliberately constructing a misleading email chain, and most seriously of all, allegations of forgery. Gavin Burrows, the private investigator who had been positioned as a critical witness for Harry's case, has recounted his evidence entirely. He now states that his signature on a key witness statement is not his. He says the statement was produced by other parties without his participation or knowledge. He says the contents are completely false. He says he was subjected to intimidation in the days leading up to the trial's opening. If any substantial portion of those allegations is accurate, Harry is not merely losing a lawsuit. He is connected to a criminal conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Obstruction, fraud, forgery. These are not civil matters. These are not financial penalties. These are criminal offenses that carry custodial sentences. But here is where this becomes genuinely extraordinary. Because while Harry potentially faces criminal exposure arising from his lawyer's alleged conduct, while his $50 million legal strategy is dissolving into scandal in real time, his marriage is simultaneously coming apart. According to multiple independent sources, Harry and Meghan are heading toward a 2026 divorce following a series of heated and emotionally raw confrontations centered on the question of returning to the United Kingdom. The dispute is described as deep, irreconcilable, and threatening to separate them not just geographically but permanently. Harry is reportedly consumed by the need to repair his relationship with his father, whose health continues to decline. He wants to return to Britain. He wants reconciliation. He wants proximity to the family he spent 6 years publicly dismantling. Meghan will not consider it. She associates Britain with the most painful and corrosive episodes of her life. She will not go back. She will not take the children back. She has, according to sources, refused to even engage the conversation. And here is what transforms this from a painful private disagreement into a financial catastrophe. California is a community property state. Let that sink in properly. Under California law, everything accumulated during the course of a marriage belongs in equal shares to both spouses. The name on the account is irrelevant. Who generated the income is irrelevant. The law is arithmetic. 50% each straight down the middle. The Archerell Foundation's $8.3 million in assets half belongs to Meghan. The Netflix money, half is hers. The Spotify payout, half. The Spare advance, half. The Montado mansion, half. Princess Diana's inheritance, potentially half, depending on whether it became commingled with marital assets over time. Harry walked into this marriage with no prenuptial protection. He has no safeguard over his inheritance, no barrier between his royal legacy and community property law, no mechanism to separate what was his from what became theirs. He is entirely exposed, and Meghan has apparently understood this for years, since approximately 2022. The pattern of her commercial activity tells a story that financial analysts specializing in high-end net worth divorce describe as textbook preparation. Her as ever lifestyle brand registered solely in her name. Harry appears nowhere in the documentation. Her Netflix deal for With Love, Meghan sole proprietor, her podcast arrangements, Meghan only, her trademark filings, none include her husband's name, viewed individually. Each of these decisions might be explained as professional independence. Viewed as a sequence, they follow a framework that anyone who has studied divorce strategy in community property jurisdictions will recognize immediately. Establish a separate professional identity. Build revenue streams independent of your spouse. Create financial infrastructure that does not require their participation. Ensure you are the primary registered owner of the assets that matter. Every single box checked, every step taken methodically over years, while the marriage remained publicly intact. Now the divorce is reportedly imminent, and here is an inventory of what Harry stands to lose. Under California law, Meghan could be entitled to 50% of everything accumulated since the wedding. The remaining Netflix payments, the book advances, the Archerell holdings, the house, and then custody, which is where the situation becomes most painful of all. California courts apply a primary caregiver standard that favors the parent who has been consistently present in the children's daily lives. Meghan's legal team will argue credibly that she has been home with Archie and Lee while Harry has been perpetually traveling. Court appearances in London, Invictus Games commitments, legal strategy meetings, media engagements. They will raise his documented emotional volatility, they will point to the cascading legal troubles. And given that Harry may now face criminal exposure linked to his lawyer's alleged forgery and witness manipulation, given that he may be personally liable for tens of millions in legal costs, given that his public reputation has been systematically destroyed over the past several years, which judge, looking at that complete picture, awards primary custody to the father who might be facing prison, and then there is the IRS. We have previously discussed the Archwell Foundation's audit situation. Charity Watch's year-long attempt to obtain their financial documents, the foundation being declared delinquent in California. Now, sources are describing the question not as whether the IRS moves on Archwell's assets, but when. What Harry appears not to have fully reckoned with is what happens if the IRS determines that Archwell was being operated as a tax shelter, if they established that charitable donations were redirected to personal benefit, if they prove that the foundation's financial instruments were being used to subsidize personal expenditure, as has been alleged. That is not a civil tax adjustment. That is criminal tax fraud. And in California, as in most jurisdictions, criminal conspiracy does not confine itself to one party in a partnership. If Harry knew what was happening, if he benefited from what was happening, if he signed the tax returns and he was on the board and he did sign them, he is personally exposed. Community property in California means sharing the assets. It also means sharing the liability. If Meghan faces federal fraud charges, Harry faces them alongside her. If she faces prison, he is looking at the same reality. He cannot construct a credible defense of ignorance. He sat on the board, he signed the documents, he lived the lifestyle that the donations allegedly funded. The Monteiro estate, the private aircraft, the security operation, the designer expenditure, all of it allegedly subsidized by a charitable foundation that was supposed to be directing resources toward refugee support and vaccine access. The IRS is indifferent to royal titles. It has no interest in trauma narratives or personal grievances. It follows the money. And when investigators trace the path of that $13 million anonymous donation through the consulting fees and the organizational expenses, when they establish precisely what proportion reached actual charitable programming versus what proportion financed Harry and Meghan's personal infrastructure, the answer is going to be catastrophic for both of them. And here is the element that makes this genuinely Shakespearean. Because while Harry is navigating financial collapse, criminal exposure, and marital disintegration simultaneously, his family is apparently preparing to receive him. Buckingham Palace has reportedly developed contingency arrangements, anticipating the divorce. The framework under consideration includes a settlement structured to be more generous than might be expected, but legally airtight, a gagging order with language tighter than anything Diana's settlement contained, with penalties for any breach that would eliminate any incentive to speak. Meghan would be permitted to retain the Duchess of Sussex title, not out of warmth or recognition, but because removing it would trigger a media conflict that the palace has calculated is not worth the cost. The palace can see where this is heading. They have been watching it approach for years. They are ready to write a check to keep her quiet while Harry returns diminished and dependent to the family he spent 6 years publicly humiliating, because that is the end game. Harry has demolished every bridge that connected him to any other viable future. He attacked his family in print. He made racism allegations against the institution on global television. He called his own brother his nemesis. He systematically dismantled the monarchy's carefully maintained dignity through interviews, documentaries, and a memoir that read like a prosecution brief. And now, with bankruptcy approaching, criminal liability materializing, and his marriage ending, he reportedly wants to come home. But he cannot arrive without leverage. The bridges are ash. He needs the palace to extend a hand. And the palace, calculating, patient, and entirely unsentimental, is prepared to do precisely that on their terms, with a settlement that protects the institution above all else, and leaves Harry with enough to rebuild a quiet life while ensuring his wife's silence is legally guaranteed. Meanwhile, Meghan is not waiting for any of this to resolve. As of March 18, 26, reports confirm that Meghan is moving forward independently without Harry following the Netflix separation. The solo career she has been architecting for years is now openly in motion. The separate trademarks, the independent brands, the revenue streams bearing only her name. While Harry was consumed by his security status, his family drama, and his mounting legal catastrophes, Meghan was building herself a way out methodically, quietly, completely, and now she is using it. So, let us be clear about the exact position Harry is in today. He refused a prenuptial agreement and surrendered protection over half his assets. He signed documents transferring brand control to his wife without adequate review. He allegedly participated in or at minimum benefited from a charitable foundation that may have committed criminal tax fraud. His solicitor is facing allegations of forgery and witness tampering in a $50 million lawsuit that is now collapsing. He faces potential criminal exposure across multiple legal fronts simultaneously. His marriage is ending. His children are likely to remain in California, and his only realistic avenue of rescue is the family he spent 6 years publicly attacking, who are prepared to offer him exactly that rescue, but on terms designed entirely to serve the institution, not him. I have been called obsessive for following this story. I have been called bitter. I have been called vindictive and every variation on those themes that the internet can generate. But I have also been right about every single thing. I said Harry was making catastrophic decisions. I said he was systematically surrendering control of his life to someone who understood commercial leverage far better than he ever would. I said the California experiment would end in legal and financial ruin. I said he would end up isolated, exposed, and desperate to return to the family he had abandoned. We are now at that exact point. The divorce jokes Harry made at the Dealbook Summit in December, telling the room that they had divorced 10-12 times according to the tabloids, those are not jokes anymore. Those are headlines currently being drafted. Those are court filings in preparation. Those are the final pages of a disaster that became inevitable the moment he declined a prenuptial agreement. The monarchy will absorb this. It absorbed Henry VIII. It survived Edward VII. It endured Diana and Andrew and everything in between. It will survive Harry's divorce and whatever criminal proceedings follow. The question is whether Harry himself survives it, whether he manages to reconstruct anything meaningful in England with his financial position halved and his reputation in fragments, whether his children will have a genuine relationship with their father or will grow up knowing him primarily as the cautionary tale, the prince who made choices that cannot be unchosen and paid for them in full. My prediction on the record, the divorce filing comes within 90 days. The IRS audit concludes with findings that generate criminal referrals. Harry reaches a settlement with the Daily Mail at devastating financial cost to avoid the discovery process exposing his lawyer's alleged misconduct. He returns to England alone, living in a property on a royal estate, stripped of military honors and public role, left with nothing but the family name he spent 6 years attempting to escape. And Meghan keeps the title, keeps the money, keeps the children, and launches her solo chapter as the Duchess who walked through the storm and came out the other side. That is not a love story. That is a long game. And Harry was never playing it. He was living inside it without ever realizing the rules. So, here is my question for you. When the divorce papers arrive, when the IRS closes in on RQL's assets, when Harry's solicitor faces disciplinary proceedings over the forgery allegations, will there still be people lining up to defend this wreckage? Or will they finally acknowledge what the evidence has been showing for years, that this was always going to end exactly like this, and that the only people who didn't see it coming were the ones who didn't want to? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If you have stayed with me this far, you already know you are not going to want to miss what comes next. The next video covers Meghan's solo rebuild in detail. The brand strategy, the narrative positioning, the carefully constructed image of a woman who emerged from a difficult marriage with her dignity, her title, her finances, and her children intact. The PR operation is already running. The story is already being written, and I am going to lay out exactly how it works before it rolls out fully, so you see it clearly before it reaches you. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and share this with someone who thinks they already know this story, because I promise you, they don't know the half of it. The mainstream media won't take you here. We will. Subscribe, hit the bell. I'll see you in the next